Today we've got a crazy revenge story on a company that tried to drag an employee across the world. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, my landlord learns the importance of keeping your word, and I learned not to renovate a rental condo. I became a renter for the first time in my mid-30s, pretty late in life. Before that, I'd been on the other side of things. I'm a landlord and developer, which I realize doesn't endear me to most readers, but in my partial defense, I've built everything that I own, and with my own hands for the first few years. I started doing painting, finishing carpentry, millwork, cabinet making to make money during university. And when I'd graduated, I had saved up enough to get horribly into debt at an extremely high interest rate, which I had to build my way out of. The first place I lived in after the dorm was a dangerously neglected warehouse that I had just bought and ended up reconstructing into a fourplex. I lived there for the next 10 years while subsequently getting into new greenfield rental developments. Just before COVID, I ended up selling that first place I had built, and the buyer wanted me out so they could raise the rent to market. This was to be my first time getting evicted, but the pain was numbed by the sale price during that huge market run-up. I also thought it might be tricky to navigate being a tenant in a building that I had built and owned for years. I decided to treat myself by renting a condo downtown, a huge step up from my previous one-bedroom that was chosen for its ROI rather than owner occupancy appeal. I spent around 3 months looking at dozens of places and built up a good sense of the rental market as my pride insisted I get the best deal possible. I quickly learned that the market that had been so favorable to me, the landlord, was extremely difficult for me, the tenant. I got incredibly lucky when I took a chance and viewed a condo on Craigslist that had no photos in the listing, never a good sign. It turned out the lack of photos was not an attempt to cover up, but simply the inability of the owner to work a digital camera. He didn't have a smartphone. It was perfect, 2005-ish building, floor-to-ceiling glass, high floor with 270-degree views, AC, open layout, well-priced. The only problem? Very worn out, shabby 2005-ish kitchen and bathroom, and the reddest looking cherry wood flooring you could imagine. Horrible, cheap honey-colored fake wood veneer cabinets, gloss black appliances, brushed aluminum finish everywhere, lots of frosted glass on the light fixtures. A simpler time. The landlord seemed like he would be pretty hands-off, and my application pitch was that if he was okay with it, I would take care of the maintenance myself and just e-transfer him rent every month and not bother him. He loved the sound of that. He said he bought a house in the suburbs and wanted to keep this condo for rental income for about 10 years until he retired. There are pretty strong tenants' rights where I live, so as long as he didn't sell, there were no-fault eviction options. We signed the tenancy agreement, paid the deposit, and moved in. The last time I saw him was during the move-in inspection, after which he exclaimed, "If you treat this place well, I promise you can stay here as long as you want." Big, firm, job interview winning boomer handshake, and he was gone. We loved the new place, a complete change from the up-and-coming part of town that we had just left, 400 feet above the street. The absolutely horrible kitchen, bathrooms, and floors haunted me, but I had a plan, and it was only a matter of time. One of my carpentry/millwork subs did a lot of retail tenant improvement, as well as model homes and apartments for much bigger developers. When you're building a 30-story high-rise, you typically spend a few $100,000 to several million mocking up a unit in a retail showroom somewhere off-site to help you collect deposits. After the building sells out, that stuff gets either junked or sold on Craigslist. When I was doing single-digit unit buildings, I had bought a number of new old stock appliances, cabinets, flooring, etc. out of a marketing manager's garage for cash. A few months later, and it's the summer of 2020 and COVID is in full swing, and my carpenter emails me. One of his clients is canceling their project, and since they're ghosting him on his draw, he is taking down their display unit. The drawings show almost an exact match to my unit in terms of dimensions. The spec sheet is jaw-dropping. Almost 20 feet of Snydero cabinets, gloss white with champagne bronze hardware, Sub-Zero/Wolf appliance package, white marble counters and black splash, Calista faucets, easily a $100,000 plus retail not including install. Oh, and 1,200 square feet of herringbone light oak planks if I don't mind pulling them up myself. How much does he want? $10,000 cash. Well, my job site is shut down for the foreseeable future, the government is making 75% of my payroll, and I don't have anything to do except stare at my awful kitchen all day. After about 3 hours of my measuring tape and pencil, I ask my carpenter if he's willing to join my bubble for $40 an hour cash for a few weekends. He is. One last step. Email my landlord and ask if he doesn't mind me doing a complete renovation on his condo. Crucially, I conclude the offer with, I'll undertake to return it to move-in condition before I leave. Not surprisingly, he accepts. That's okay, do whatever you want. We love having you as a tenant. Time to go to work. I get the old kitchen out in about 2 days, hampered by my need to work quietly as I'm doing this without permits. Not like they're doing inspections anyways, but still. A side effect of this slow pace and my wife's current obsession with Marie Kondo is that everything is removed intact and carefully taped and labeled. Taking out the old kitchen does indeed spark joy. The old floating cherry wood floor comes up in the morning, also tagged and labeled and bundled in the order it was removed. The carpenter comes over and he gets the new kitchen installed in less than 2 days while I lay down the floor. The floor actually ended up taking me a week, mainly because I had to make the end cuts of my storage unit across town, since I definitely couldn't run a miter saw with everyone at my home during lockdown. After just under 2 weeks, I had effectively a brand new, ultra high-end condo for just under $12,000 out of pocket. At this point, I'm sure everyone reading this is face-palming as they wonder why on earth I'm proud of renovating someone else's condo at my cost. It did make sense at the time, as I was under the impression I'd be there for a good 10 years, plus the fact that I was paying around $500 a month under market at move-in, and more like $1,500 a month under market in the current condition. There are a variety of economic and market conditions and segments where it makes more financial sense to rent than it does to buy. For example, my monthly rent would not have even covered the interest portion of a mortgage, let alone condo fees, insurance, taxes, and the opportunity cost of the down payment. In other words, it was cheaper to rent the condo than it was to rent the money that I would need to buy the condo. Also, as a builder, cash is a critical tool, and the more cash I can hold on to, the bigger I can build. With my 1-year lease and the fact that I had lots of free time, it didn't seem like such a reckless move. And who can say no to a $2,000 kitchen faucet? Filling a glass of water feels like working the bolt on a well-oiled Holland & Holland rifle. Worst case, I could probably get most of it back by selling just the appliances if something unexpected happened. Which it did. I had undertaken all this after evaluating all the possibilities and weighing the risk of putting time and money into a place I don't own. I had failed to consider one important detail: the wife. By the spring of 2023, the upgrades had, in my opinion, paid for themselves after nearly 36 months of use. I hadn't seen the landlord since I moved in, and he hadn't been in touch since approving my renovation, except for the monthly confirmation he'd accepted my rent transfer. So naturally, I began to get concerned when, by the end of the first week of May, he hadn't deposited my rent. 2 emails went unanswered until there was a knock on the door. I opened up and was hit with a wall of flowery perfume, which perfectly matched the wall of floral print and red heels standing in my doorway. The landlord had contracted COVID in 2023 and sent his wife to collect the rent. I get out my phone to cancel the transfer and go into my office to look for my checkbook. I come back to find her, still in her heels, standing in the middle of the living room spinning like a Technicolor top. Oh wow, this looks fabulous. I heard you were doing some repos, but I never thought it would look like this. Is that a Sub-Zero fridge? She opens the fridge. My fridge. I love the floors. And are these custom cabinets? She turns the kitchen faucet on and off probably 6 times. It took days to air out the smell of perfume after she left. Several hours later, my wife came home, and given the lingering smell in the apartment, I'd already briefed her on who had stopped by. She said, "Freak. I can tell by the smell she's seeing dollar signs." Sure enough, 3 weeks later, I get a call from a realtor who wants to schedule the photographer to take listing photos as the landlords are selling. Of course, the landlord, who has now recovered from his COVID, will not take my calls and won't respond to my emails. I'm upset that he doesn't have the courage to admit what he's doing. My wife is upset because she doesn't want to move, and I'm feeling embarrassed that I trusted this guy. I'm not really losing much since we've lived here for 3 years and paid tens of thousands less than market rent during that time, but it still stings. Even in the slow market, the place sells in 3 weeks, and yes, the new owners want to move in. They give me the required 3 months notice and pay the 1 month rent compensation. I note that the listing is advertised exquisitely renovated with the top of the line appliances, cabinets, and built-ins, no expense spared. My first instinct was to at least contact the realtor and suggest he check with the landlord about what was included with the apartment and what was being represented, but the description in the listing infuriated my wife to such an extent that we agreed to let them do their own due diligence. I think you can all guess where this is going. This time, it only took 3 days to pull the new kitchen out and put the old kitchen back in. Same with the floors. Turns out you can lay 1,000 square feet of flooring in about 2 hours if it's all pre-cut and labeled. But some of the T&G was a bit loose, so I made sure to glue that jerk down to the concrete nice and tight to make sure it doesn't creak or pop. It's exceptionally cheap, so it's going to splinter and separate if it ever needs to come back up. The old Home Depot Glacier Bay $49 kitchen faucet unfortunately started leaking when I put it back in, so I treated the new owners to a brand new replacement. Now $60. The new one leaked as well, but not much, and only when it was on. I re-watched the move-in inspection video to refresh my memory and made sure everything was exactly as it was when I moved in, right down to a few small holes in the drywall. I had also forgotten that the old oven control board was fried, which meant it kept shutting off every 10 minutes. My wife and I debated leaving a wireless camera up on the wall to capture the new owner's delight at how faithfully we upheld our tenancy agreement, as unfortunately we moved out about a week before their planned move-in date, but there was/is still a reasonable chance of getting sued, so we opted not to, as intent is half the battle. I don't actually know what happened since I've ignored the dozens of phone calls from the landlord and the new owners and just sent them a registered letter with my tenancy agreement, move-in inspection video on DVD, and a copy of the email exchange with the landlord from 2020 where he allowed me to renovate the condo provided I put everything back the way it was when I moved in. I did get a text from the realtor calling me a petty, vindictive jerk, and that I'm lucky I'm not getting sued, implying that my landlord probably is getting sued, and furthermore, one or all of them have looked into suing me and were advised against it. The concierge recently told me that nobody has moved into the condo yet, which presents another intoxicating possibility. Because the new owners evicted us for their personal use, according to the tenancy law, if they fail to move in within 6 months, they owe me a full year's rent as compensation for a fraudulent eviction. I still haven't bought a place. I ended up unfortunately having to pay a fair bit more in rent to move upstairs in the same building, with a different layout but thankfully much nicer finishings. I have an alert set for the building that tells me if a unit gets listed. I'm ready to make an offer if there is a fixer-upper that comes up for sale. I even have a kitchen that might just fit. Here's the one question I have. I feel like OP really went out of their way to try to excuse the expense of doing it all themselves, paying the 10 grand themselves for the renovation. They added in extra detail oh, well, also the rent was $500 under market value at the time. My question is, where in this seemingly expensive area that OP is living in did they store that old apartment's basically entire apartment for that whole time? OP's I've saved all this money, it basically paid for itself. I'm here where are the storage fees being calculated in that equation? Pipsqueak Pilot commented on the post saying, storing an old worn-out kitchen just in case you might need it sounds like something literally every contractor I've worked for would do. Hoarders, all of you. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of revenge, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? Our next story is, I outdid my fiancé's petty boss. I run a physical therapy clinic and my fiancé is a lawyer. A few months ago at our engagement party, I mentioned to a few of her colleagues that I'm happy to give them a discount if they need to see me. 4 of them have become my regulars. One day, one of her partners booked in. To put it lightly, none of the colleagues or my fiancé like him. After spending an hour with him, I understand why. He's very arrogant and condescending, but strangely desperate for approval. I remained pleasant with him though. After paying, he did mention, but I just said, well, it's for employees with a smirk. He's been in a few times. 3 weeks ago, he came in and conversation turned to how my day was going. One of the therapists was sick, so I was busier than usual seeing their clients. He said that must be annoying and asked if they needed a medical certificate. I just said no, and I think that's a stupid policy as I would rather someone stay home and not infect the clinic. He countered saying he wanted to be more strict with that at his office to prevent people slacking off. I ended up getting a rotten cold and eventually gave it to my fiancée. It hit her hard and she ended up working from home Friday. She deteriorated over the weekend and took Monday off. Her boss emailed her this morning saying that she would need a medical certificate. First time that's been enforced. Coincidentally, he had a 2 o'clock appointment with me today. So I booked my fiancé in with her doctor at 2 and let him know that I have to cancel his appointment because I have to drive her to the doctor. To be fair, she's got vertigo and is pretty lightheaded. I would get back to him if I had any availability, but I'm fully booked for the next 3 weeks. He's messaged both of us saying that the medical isn't necessary. My fiancée said she can't cancel due to late cancellation policy and that it's rude, and I just said it's best she go. I understand if you've had negative experiences in the past with employees kind of abusing the "I'm sick, I'm staying home" policy thing, but am I wrong in saying unless you're working in a field that is a little bit more entry level, like a fast food place, that it would be a little bit more understandable to kind of operate the way OP thinks, which is if you're sick, stay home? I mean, I'm definitely with OP. I'd rather somebody stay home than ruin the office by spreading around a sickness. Now, if you have an individual who's taking too much sick time, why would you ruin it for everybody else rather than just deal with the one problem character? On the other hand, though, ironically, OP was the one that got sick. Aw geez, what now? Commented on the post, "Oh, I love it when people get to live the day they deserve." Our next story is, my time is just as important as yours. My wife and I moved into a newly renovated building. The first 4 floors were there already as a sort of former slums. The building was renovated and had 3 floors added. We're in the new floors. There is a bit of tension between some of the new residents and some of the old ones. Mostly it's about communal resources. The old residents are lower income and have a mentality of not wanting to spend any money at all, even though the agreed-to renovation gained extra rooms for their apartments, an elevator, etc. One of the contingency points is over the building's front yard. They don't want to pay for a gardener even though it works out to be $10 a month for each household. To be clear, we don't own the apartment, we rent. But I get that some people have a hard time making ends meet and thought I would take the yard as a project. One of the neighbors, Danielle, keeps starting arguments in the building's group chat. She keeps writing crap about the old residents needing to respect the new residents more, about how much she spent on her apartment. She started complaining about the yard endlessly. She also orders food a lot, and due to a mix-up, I'm always getting her orders and sending it over. Well, I'm a reserve soldier, and I was called in over a long stretch. During this time, she kicked up a fuss that the yard looks bad. I apologized, explained that I didn't have time to get to it on account of being drafted. She responded that her time is just as valuable as mine, and she doesn't want to waste it talking about the yard. Then just don't. This led to me noping out of the group chat. Didn't feel like fighting, said farewell and thanks for the fish, and left. I'm still doing the yard, but at my own pace. Today, 2 huge bags of cat food arrived at my door, had her name on it. I put a letter on it that said, "Dear Danielle, sorry I didn't let you know about the delivery. I would have, but I value my time just as much as you value yours. Good luck." I am way too happy about this. You know, I'm just surprised that in the group chat, OP did a sophisticated attempt to do a double backward somersault through a hoop whilst whistling the Star-Spangled Banner, but in fact the message ended up just being, "So long and thanks for all the fish." If you know, you know. Beagley99 commented on the post, "Her Uber Eats may get awfully cold as well." OP responded commenting, "I swear to God, next hamburger she orders that comes my way, I'm eating whether I'm hungry or not. I consider it reparations for having to share Earth with her." Our next story is revenge for parking in my spot. This happened a couple of years ago when I first moved into our apartment community. To set the scene, there are a ridiculously low amount of guest parking spots available. On the side that I'm on, there are 3 apartment buildings with 24 apartments each, so 72 units total. There are 3 parking stalls available marked for guests. 3, 1 for each building. There's street parking available as well. Anyways, one day I get home from work and I find that someone has parked in my parking stall. I was pretty ticked. Thankfully, our leasing office is very encouraging of tenants calling and utilizing the towing company. In fact, our leasing package given to us when we moved in had the towing company phone number, and we get emails encouraging us to use them if someone is in our spot. So that's exactly what I did. So after a while, I decided to go out to see if I got my parking spot back. Indeed I did. However, when I went outside, there was also a group of 3 women, grandma, mom, and daughter, looking around with great concern. The daughter was freaking out saying, "Oh crap, where's my car? Where's my car? I have to be at work in an hour." When they saw me, one of them asked, "Do you know the number of the towing company?" I said that I didn't and wished them luck. I checked my mailbox for mail and went back inside with a strange satisfaction. Later, I parked my car back in my stall. Moral of the story is freak around, find out, play stupid games, get stupid prizes, and all of that. Is it dumb? And you can flame me for this, but I would feel kind of bad like if I went out and saw that grandma, mom, and daughter. Don't get me wrong, there still would be like a tinge of like, screw you for taking my spot and all that, but my brain is just like hardwired to feel awful if I'm an inconvenience to anybody. I mean, I was responding to comments earlier and somebody pointed out that I missed an Australian term and I'm like, no, I'm such an idiot. Everybody's gonna hate my dumb American reading comprehension ability. Ultra Dip commented on the post, I would have played even dumber, like, huh? Your car got towed? Why would they do that? OP responded, oh, believe me, I so wanted to. I wanted to ask them if they parked in a guest stall and explain that there's only so many, but I thought that would have been taking it too far. Our next story is, tried to drag me across the world to blame me for your failures? Get left high and dry. Drag me to another country to fix your problems and then try to blame me for them? Get left high and dry. This is unfolding basically in real time, but we're near the end of the story now. This story is a bit technical in nature, but I've tried to spare as many details as possible. My company does industrial software globally, which involves multiple modules interacting with physical processes. Projects often involve installation and testing locally, but my team's part is able to be deployed and tested about 90% remotely. There was one project in North America where my team's software was deployed months ago, and we've only had to deal with fairly minor bugs since then. However, the project overall is running hella late and the local team is struggling hard. So 3 weeks ago, they asked me to fly out about halfway across the world to help fix it while I finish off that last 10%. I arrive and find that the other key software module in the system barely works. But the people on site who are supposed to be working on it, instead of knuckling down and fixing it, have basically been blaming everything else. Talking to the other team members, these guys have spent the last month blaming the mechanical and electrical designers, fitters, and technicians, often without a real basis. When I arrive, they seem happy that I'm here to help fix things, but about a week later, shocked to nobody, they start trying to blame me for their problems as well. I tolerate this for about a week, explaining to them how the system should work. I was a key designer, collecting logs and evidence of the problems and performing root cause analyses to help them locate the problem with their code. It doesn't stop them from trying, but it keeps my hands clean and makes progress to me going home. Then last Friday, I get a baffling email from the group of them. Apparently, they had met at a time where the project manager knew I wasn't available and constructed an elaborate theory about how the software I was responsible for was doing the wrong thing, and convinced the project manager, who is non-technical, into backing them. In a call to discuss it, I was told by the project manager that I was responsible for collaborating with the team to fix this issue, which had resulted in delays to project milestones. I try to explain my side, but get shouted down in the call. I experience a very powerful moment of clarity about what is happening and immediately change my strategy. That shift, I explain again that I consider the issue to be unlikely and demand to see hard evidence backing this claim. They cannot produce anything beyond the data at this breakpoint isn't what it should be, which I explain is not conclusive as it could still be the fault of their code. I then spend half of the shift trying to replicate the problem and capturing network traffic logs between the two systems, the interface where these systems interact, but no matter how hard I try, I cannot replicate it. Instead of delivering it just to them as I had been, I copy in my management back home all the way to the top, along with a paper trail showing how I'd been blindsided, demanded to fix a problem that could not be traced to my area of responsibility, all without evidence and documented names and exactly how much time had been wasted. It turns out I'm not alone. Some privately reach out to me asking for more details, explaining they are seeing a similar thing unfolding on a different project run by members of the same team. I happily oblige. In the middle of the shift, I explain this in clear terms to them, and they lose their crap, denying what they had done, backtracking, trying to blame me some more. One looked like they might start crying. The next day, I send a formal letter to HR back home withdrawing my consent to be there, with all the legalese referencing my employment agreement and specific legal statutes, and explaining that among other reasons, this had become an unsafe and uncollaborative work environment. They agree without any fuss, and I start planning to return. The project manager loses their crap and almost begs me to stay because it means that I will not be present for the client sign-off. And there were still things to be fixed, and the likelihood of this local team fixing themselves is next to zero. I leave tomorrow, and testing starts the following day. Normally, this would be unfathomable, but at this point, I have enough evidence that I'm basically untouchable. I am both impressed and disgusted by the audacity of this team, but they freaked with the wrong person and just landed themselves an even bigger world of pain. So are these people that aren't doing their jobs, seemingly can't do their jobs, and are shifting the blame on any scapegoat they can possibly push them on, still employed because they somehow possess some particular set of skills, sans Liam Neeson? Do they have some incriminating Polaroids? I mean, how do these people still have a job? They're literally non-functional. OP proved it to be that way, and now the one person that was supposed to fix things is being shipped out via HR because it's unworkable. Leon FH05 commented on the post, they really thought bringing in the expert would help their case. Nothing like documenting everything and watching them panic when the receipts go up the chain. Blitz Sammy replied, they didn't just bring the expert in to let them help, they brought in the expert to pin the blame on him. That's like some 5D chess crap. OP responded to that saying, I wouldn't give them that much credit, it seems to be a reflex for these people. A bear has more control over whether or not it takes a crap in the woods. Our next story is, let your teenager kick me for a 9-hour flight? Get stuck on the plane extra long. Yesterday, I was flying to America from the UK, and a mother and a parent 18-year-old daughter were sitting next to me. She looked younger, but the mother gave her alcohol during the flight that she had ordered, so who knows? The whole flight, the daughter had her shoes off and kept elbowing and kicking me with her stinky sock feet while talking loudly. At one point, I was asleep, and the daughter kicked me awake and slapped me with her jacket. Right before landing, the two of them were physically fighting. Play or not, I got hit a few times and told them to be civilized. Now, for my pettiness, as soon as the fasten seatbelt sign came off, they got up and obviously were trying to force their way off the plane early. We were in 37G to J, very back of the plane. I threw down my table and kept watching my program, trapping them and told them, patience is a virtue. We'll be the last off anyway. They were not pleased. When the rows in front were clearing out, I waited till the last second to close up, and as I got my bag out of the overhead, I put it on my seat, blocking them again, and accidentally hit the daughter with my jacket on the way out of the overhead, keeping her back. There was a very large family behind us that made their way behind me in the aisle, blocking them in again. I didn't see them at baggage till 5 minutes after I made it. Didn't affect them a lot, but sure made me feel good. It's the little things. You know, I've never even really understood the big rush to get off of the planes at the very end, right at landing. I mean, what do you gotta do? Rush to the baggage claim area to be the first one there to wait for 5 minutes for your baggage to slowly come around on the conveyor belt? Almost all of us are just going straight there at the end anyways. Let me add a big asterisk there though, emergencies notwithstanding. Sometimes you do need to get somewhere very quick, but a lot of these people that get off and want to get off quick, they're not in some huge rush to be somewhere in minutes. Grateful John commented, flew with a friend cross country years ago. Family in the row behind us had 2 preteen kids who were kicking our seats back constantly. The parents said nothing. At one point, both parents left their seats. My friend stood up, leaned over the seat, and told the kids, "Stop kicking my seat or I'm going to rip off your head and crap down your neck." The kicking stopped the rest of the flight. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.